Welcome to Untold, the business podcast, bringing you the best kept secrets in Utah. Big business stories like Amazon, Apple, and Uber are all over the place in media, but people, I think, can't really relate to those the way they can relate to small business stories. And small business, I think, is where the real action is anyway. In Utah, about half of employment in Utah is through small businesses. And the Utah small business community is really dynamic. Utah small business in the last 25 years has grown more than any other state in the US. So Untold is bringing you up close and personal stories from amazing Utah businesses. With me today is Jordan Smith, the founder and CEO of JetDental. Really cool story. Welcome, Jordan. And please tell us a little bit about the untold story behind how you got started with JetDental.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. So JetDental, we're a pop-up dental clinic for workplaces across the country. So we started by serving businesses. We go out to a company and we set up in a spare conference room or a training room,
Mm-hmm.
and we enable employees to get their dental work done for free through their insurance while they're at work. Um, I don't know if you want me to just launch right into how we started the company.
I'd love to hear, like, where did the idea come from?
Yeah, I wish it were like a little sexier of a story. But basically, I co-founded the business with my dad, and we were looking for a business to buy and scale. So we were trying to find maybe something a little bit smaller, startup but that had some revenue that we could scale.
Hmm.
We even hired a broker, and we were flying across the country interviewing people selling their business, and we just didn't find anything we loved. While we were looking, we saw we met a dentist and his wife was a hygienist, and they were doing mobile dentistry for nursing homes.
Hmm.
And they actually worked at a practice, and then just on the weekend would go and find a nursing home and go serve some folks. And they wanted an absurd amount of money for their business, and we were like, oh well, how many clients do you have? And tell me why you're worth that. And they definitely didn't have a business. It was a side gig, right? Like they didn't
Yeah.
have like the list of clients. It was just kind of like, oh, when we want business, we go on the weekend. So that kind of planted the seed in our mind of, oh, mobile dentistry. That's kind of interesting. My wife had worked for a dentist all through college, and I was a prototypical bad patient. Like I would make an
Okay.
appointment, and the day of, I would call my wife, and I'm like, I can't make it. Like I got this meeting, and or I got this class thing I got to study for, and I would cancel last second, right? And my wife worked at the office, and so I did think that was interesting. Like, I think there's probably a lot of people like me where you should go to the dentist, you have insurance, but it's just another thing, and you postpone it and you postpone it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, it's been like a year or two and I haven't been to the dentist.
Hmm.
Um, so we talked to actually that dentist my wife worked for, and we said, hey, like, what do you think about this? And he kind of ran through the economics of dentistry with us,
Yeah.
and we said, yeah, we think that's kind of a cool idea. So we bought some equipment, we tested it out with some companies, and really quickly learned that there was a need. What we were seeing was like the people who were signing up hadn't been to the dentist in a long time. The
Oh.
employers thought it was a cool thing. They had people coming on site to do flu shot clinics and massages and all kinds of other things. And so we felt like, well, yeah, there's really a business here. And so from there, we just started to grow it. Started in Utah, and eventually we expanded nationwide. So yeah.
Wow, that's cool. So I'm curious, what kind of companies, what kind of companies love your product?
Yeah. So really, it doesn't really matter what industry. What we look for is anybody who's got a couple hundred bodies or more in one location, right? So if you have
Oh.
a few hundred people or more in a given location, that's a good fit for us. For our business model, we need to see a lot of appointments and a lot of people for it to be economically feasible. So we're
Okay.
typically looking to see at least 15 people in a day. So we can see up to 60 patients in a day. We can set up a lot of chairs and see a lot of folks. But that's typically what we're looking for. So when we started, it was all the white collar tech companies that kind of ate it up.
Oh.
Here in Utah, we have a lot of them in the Silicon Slopes.
Yeah.
We like to call ourselves. But so we had a lot of clients like that eating it up here in Utah. And then as we grew nationwide, we saw a similar trend. After COVID, um, and COVID almost killed us. We can talk about that too, but almost killed our business. Um, After COVID, we started to see a lot more manufacturing, industrial, food
Mm,
service, probably more, uh, less salaried folks and more hourly folks, and people a little less in less control of their schedule. So, but again, we serve it all. We serve anywhere from chicken plants. Purdue Farms is a client of ours, to
okay.
T-Mobile is a client of ours, really white collar. So it just kind of depends. It really doesn't matter, I guess I should say, what industry you're in. Really, what matters is, do you have a fair group of people at your office?
Okay. Okay. You know, and I saw on your website, like there's no cost to employers to do this, right? So I can see that it's not, it's not putting them out to have you in, but I'm wondering, like, what kind of benefit are you generating for employers and for the employees by coming in with your mobile practice?
Yeah. So our mission is, we make it easy to have great oral health with fanatical care. That's one of our values, is providing fanatical care. But for the employee, I think the value is, of course, it's just convenient, right? And so our
Yeah.
big aha moment as we started doing this, and as we started growing JetDental, was that the average patient we see has not been to the dentist in over 2 years.
Wow.
So you've got a whole bunch of people who have insurance and are paying for dental insurance, or their company's paying for the dental insurance, and they're not going to the dentist regularly. And I'm not a dentist, so let me provide that caveat. I have no dental background other than now starting JetDental. But in dentistry, one of the great things is that if you are going to the dentist regularly and you take care of your preventive care, you can prevent most of the bad things that can
Mm,
happen,
yeah.
including gum disease, which half of Americans have, which can lead to a lot of other issues. It can lead to heart issues, all kinds of problems. And so that really excited us, that like the people we were getting in this organization were the people who need it most.
Mm,
Similarly, when you talk to a lot of benefits people or HR people, and they talk about the costs in their company, obviously healthcare is a massive cost. Dental is just a part of that, right? It's a minor
mm,
part of the overall healthcare cost, but the bottom 5% of unhealthy people in an organization are 80% of the cost. So
oh,
generally speaking, the very unhealthiest of your organization are costing your organization the most money. And what we were excited about is, by making it convenient, right? By making it easy, by putting the dentist in your office,
uh,
by setting up our booths and coming into a spare conference room, we get the people who need it most in the organization, people who aren't going, right? The people who, instead of having $100 cavity filling, are going to
uh,
have $1,000 crown or a $2,000 implant or whatever, right? And so by making it convenient, were able to prevent a lot of costs down the road. And that benefits both the employee from an out of pocket cost perspective, and the employer from a premium increase perspective.
mm,
And so there's a myriad of studies out there that show that preventive care works really in any healthcare scenario, but in dentistry for sure it works. Cigna did a really cool study, of a
okay.
5 year study, that they tracked people who had the dental and the medical insurance, and they saw that the people who went even just once a year, they had 33% less cost than the other side of the scenario, people who didn't go at all. And the people who didn't go at
Oh,
all was like a 44% increase in costs, higher ER rate, and hospital stay rates. So definitely there's a
wow.
correlation between your dental and your medical health.
So if you can get them in the dentist chair, you keep them out of the ER. Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's definitely correlation there, right? Yeah,
Correlation, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's correlation with a lot of things like that, right? If you're not
Yeah.
going to your dentist, you're not doing regular checkups here, you're not taking your cholesterol meds, right? Like there's correlation with a lot of those things. But at least in our world and in dentistry, if we can get people to go regularly, you can
Yeah.
prevent a whole host of issues. And that's why you're people who have a local dentist, right? Like that's probably why they remind you all the time, and they send you texts and emails like, hey, come back in. it's not just because they want to make money from you. Of course, they're incentivized to, but
Yeah.
if they can get you in the chair and see you every 6 months, they can prevent a lot of worse things from happening.
Yeah. Mine don't let me out of the office until I've got the next appointment.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
common. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
way to go. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So, whenever I talk to somebody who's innovating, right, and creating a potential disruption, I always wonder about like, what are you disrupting, right? What kind of resistance or headwinds have you run into with this new delivery model? Like, I'm wondering, what about the existing dentist community, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think it's changed as we've grown. Early on, we ran into that a lot more than we do now. I think still we run into the occasional dentist who feels maybe threatened or is a little defensive or feels like, oh, well, you can't provide everything for these patients, and so therefore you're bad. And
Mm.
what I say to that is, first of all, I think once they learn about us, I think actually they realize they benefit from JetDental because we're not stealing your patients. In fact, we're seeing the people in the community who aren't going to the dentist. They don't have a dentist. They're not going anywhere regularly. These are the people who
Mm.
are going to one day wake up and have tooth pain and have an abscess, and they're going to need an extraction and a crown or whatever, right? And so
Yeah.
we can't do much past cavity fillings and extractions on site.
Right.
When I say can't, we could do crowns, we could do root canals. Um, Practically speaking, the businesses we serve, they don't really want that happening in their conference room. And so
Got it.
we do basic bread and butter dentistry, right? We do X-rays, the cleaning, scaling, and root planing for people with gum disease, that deeper cleaning. We do cavity fillings, and then much past that, some of the bigger procedures we're going to refer back to a local dentist. And so
Oh.
local dentists actually benefit from us. Most of the dentists who work for us work in another practice, and so often they're able to even refer them back to their own practice.
So
Um,
it's almost
so
business development. It's not a threat.
yeah,
It's actually
it actually
additive.
definitely helps them. Yeah, yeah, and we have a lot of
Wow.
dentists who that's a big incentive for them to work for us is I can get patients back to my practice. So but yeah, totally early on. I mean, we had some stuff like that. I mean, we had a dentist who he went on our Facebook and Google and pretended he was a patient and left a review and like a negative review, and we like went and called him out and said, "Hey, you're a dentist. Like, don't do that." Like so. That's the only time that happened. But most of the time, I think once they learn about us, they feel a little better about what we're doing, and I think ultimately a lot of what we're able to do is expand
Yeah.
access to care. We're definitely serving in a lot of remote places, panhandle of Oklahoma and the coast of Oregon, and getting out to businesses where there's not a lot of dentists around, period.
Mm.
So that's some of what we're able to do. And if we can get these people kind of back into the dental system, period, right? The dental ecosystem, not just seeing us, but seeing other in-network dentists. We don't make any money when we refer someone to a
Yeah.
dentist. We're just referring them, right? And we want them to get the care that they need. So certainly we've faced it, but as we've grown, I think as people learn about us, it's been great that we're able to actually provide a benefit to the dentists as well.
Well, it's interesting because you're targeting places where people have insurance, but they're not using it. They're not using the services.
Yeah.
Um, or how do insurers view your services?
Yeah. Similarly, something that I was really excited about and happy for early on was insurance carriers really liked it. They really saw the value of preventive care. They really preach
Preventative,
preventive
yeah.
care. A lot of insurance
Mm.
carriers send postcards in the mail to their members saying, "Hey, you got to go get your checkup done, and here's where you can go to find an in-network dentist near you." And so we made a conscious effort early to be in network, right? And
Okay.
there's debate
Okay.
about that. There's dental offices who go out of network or aren't in network because you can um, either make more money or you can just come up with a plan that perhaps saves the person in a similar way. But because we were serving businesses, I think obviously it made sense that we wanted to use the benefit they already had. So we were getting
Yeah.
a network with every carrier that we could. And as we've grown and built trust across the country, we actually have a lot of insurance carriers who are referring for us now. So about a third to 40% of our new sales every month are actually coming from insurance carrier or broker leads, like benefit broker leads,
Mm.
where they're referring us to those folks. And so we've had a great partnership with the biggest carriers in the country who see the benefit for their clients, and they have the data to see which clients maybe have worse preventive utilization than others, and so they can kind
Okay.
of go to these groups and say, hey, we know you have a lot of folks who aren't going, and we've got a solution here to help you. So that's been a lot of fun working with the carriers, and I've really enjoyed that part of it because the carriers I've met have been very smart, successful professionals, and it's fun to network with those kinds of individuals. And I definitely, one of the most gratifying parts of the job has been able to make relationships with folks like that, as well as some of the best and brightest at some of these large companies, and many that we serve that I have an NDA and I can't name, but great
Yeah.
companies, some of the best employers in the country that we serve, and that's been a lot of fun too, to engage with those kinds of individuals who are successful and smart and talented in their own right.
Oh, neat. Well, that's cool. It seems like, yeah, you've kind of turned some of the potential weaknesses actually have become strengths for you. I'm wondering, it seems like you're enjoying some success, growing and scaling. You mentioned earlier an episode, right, that was threatening to your company. I'd love to hear more about, that challenge. How did, what was happening? How did you navigate it? What did you learn?
Yeah. So COVID nearly killed our business. Actually, a side note, we used to have kind of more like probably 6 or 7 either regional or mostly national competitors, and all of them except one went out of business, during COVID. So it was a
Oh,
really tough time. Obviously, if you think about what happened during COVID, first of all, it's hard for a lot of industries and a lot of people for more important reasons than just business. But um, everybody went work remote, right? Like no one was going into the office anymore.
yeah.
Additionally, most state governments put a ban on preventive care of any kind. That's 90% of what I'm doing, right? Is preventive dental care. And no one's working in the office anymore. And so suddenly my business that was starting to grow and thrive, we had no revenue. So we literally went from being on a $6 million run rate. So it's kind of like our first year of, we just expanded like a bunch of areas in 2019, kind of end of 2019. We took our first round of funding. It closed in January of 2020.
Ooh,
Um, and so, we just expanded. Like we just were growing. Our sales were like really starting to hit off the charts. Like every single day, it felt like that flywheel was churning so quickly. And then since we got a lot of Utahns here on this podcast, I'm sure Rudy Gobert gets COVID. They canceled the game, and it was like that. It was literally
yeah,
like
like
that
in
day,
March.
my business just
Yeah.
complete stop.
Mm.
And so yeah, we literally had zero revenue, I think, for 3 months, like no services whatsoever. We started to finally kind of tick back some more blue collar folks. We experimented with apartments. That didn't go very well. Like we tried a bunch of stuff. And ultimately, for like a year or two, it was really just survival. Like, unfortunately, we had to let go of a lot of employees. We had to keep kind of a core group. We furloughed some and said, hey, we'll bring you back when we can. And we were able to do that with a lot of folks. And definitely one thing I learned from it is it's hard to predict what's going to happen when you're starting a business. And as an entrepreneur, I think we did some contingency planning early on and thought about a lot of things. I never thought there would be a pandemic and it would just shut my business down. Like I
Yeah.
think a lot of people didn't think that, right? And so in a weird way, I actually didn't feel that freaked out about that. Like I've been more stressed about other things. And the thing that almost killed us didn't stress me out quite as much because I was like, man, I don't know. There's much I could have done about this.
If I'm
Like
going to go
I don't.
down, I want to go down with that kind of
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah,
I couldn't have seen it coming, right?
yeah. But then on the other
Mm.
side of it, we have a lot less competitors, and it set us up in a really
Oh,
strong position with these insurance carriers now that are referring
mm,
for us, and with a lot of these big businesses who are now really trying to find a way and a reason to get people back to work. And we're one of many reasons why, hey, we can bring you this
okay.
benefit, right? And so in the end, it's really helped us. And so one thing I've learned about entrepreneurship generally from this experience is um, I'll say two things. One, it's going to be a lot harder than you think. Like startups, generally speaking, especially when you're starting something from new, you have no revenue right out the gate. You're bootstrapping it for however long, in our case, it was like 3 years that we bootstrapped it. And ironically took money to grow and then ended up just having to use that money to survive. um, when it's going to be harder than you think is kind of the bottom line. Like whatever you think it's going to be, it's probably going to be harder. And there's going to be a lot of late nights and there's going to be a lot of um, questioning if you made a good call, and there's going to be a lot of that. And I think one thing I try to remind myself throughout it is the amount of things I was learning and the amount of muscle I was building where I maybe would have built fat in a more cushy job.
Yeah.
It's hard to put a figure on that of
Mm.
what's that worth, but I think there's value there. And so that's one learning I would say is like it's going to be a lot harder than you think. And another I would say is a lot of entrepreneurship and starting a company is about survival. In those early days when you haven't figured it out,
Yeah.
sometimes it's about survival. And you're going to make mistakes and you're going to screw up, and learning how to recover and make it better the next time and iterate and fail fast and learn is a really important skill.
Mm.
But a lot of it is survival. Like, can you just survive to the next thing until some things start to work in your favor?
Right.
And we've certainly seen that at JetDental, right? Like we just had to survive a couple years of suddenly our model seemingly was you know not going to work anymore.
Right.
And
And then, but then
it
it
came
was,
back, and on the other end of it, we've been stronger. And so
yeah.
funding matters. It does. Like, do you have the cash? Can you raise the cash? Like knowing how to do that is important. And starting this business with my dad, who's a serial entrepreneur, that was a huge thing I've learned from him. He had a lot of connections and he'd been successful previously, and he was able to leverage that to help us survive. And we have great investors who helped us get through
Okay.
a really challenging period. And I think when a lot of other investors would have just pushed to scrap, they said, "Hey, we believe you can corner the market in something that's really cool,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to come back," right? And at the time, none of us knew how long it would be, but they believed in us and were able to help us get through. So anyway, I'm rambling
Interesting.
now, but that's
Do
a
you,
couple of things I learned from that.
I'm curious, do you, do you think so I heard you saying that the investment was one of the ways that you survived this episode. At some point, do you think that was the biggest factor why you survived and others didn't? And
So I think another reason was most of our competitors, they did a model where so we do a pop-up model. We have a Sprinter van and we can fit 7 or 8 operatory units in that Sprinter van. But we
yeah,
come into the building, so we come and set up in a spare conference room or training room. If you go on our website jetdental.com, you'll see we've got these
yeah.
nice pop-up branded privacy walls that we set up. Most of our competitors had trailers,
Oh, so they had
and
more
one of
capital. Mm.
yes, yeah, they had a lot more capital expended in those trailers that were pretty expensive to build. Um, and so they were saddled with probably more debt than we were
Yeah.
on those trailers. I think our cap structure is a heck of a lot cheaper for one van. The other problem with the trailer is you can see less people than we can see with our pop-up
Uh,
units in the business. So we actually tried trailers. We had 3 of them. We've sold all of them except for one now, and trying to sell that one. Basically, the bottom line was it's just not a very viable business model.
okay.
It's hard. You can't see enough people. The trailers break down, and if it breaks down, suddenly you can't do any service. Right? With ours, one
Okay.
little unit breaks down, we fix it or replace that unit. But we still got 5 or 6 others that work. Right? So
Right.
I think that was a
Okay.
big factor too. Is they couldn't
Sounds like
recover from
you've
that
got
debt that they got
better
into.
scalability, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. So I want to come back to something that you mentioned earlier. You talked about fanatical care as one of your values within the
Yeah.
company. I love talking about values in companies. It's a big differentiator, I think, in successful businesses. Tell me more about the values at Jet Dental.
Yeah. So we have three core values. We started actually with when we started the company, we have four. We went down to three. I think just partly because there's a lot of magic marketing wise and remembering wise when you have three items or less. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff
Okay.
on that. But anyway, our values are what we stand for. We didn't mean to do this, but we ended up having an acronym, FOR. It's our values are what we stand for, and it's fanatical care, one team, and relentless. And I think they're probably similar values to ones you hear at other companies. But one thing that I think we've done a good job at is we reiterate those values in every meeting. All of our managers and team leaders, they start meetings at least most of the time with, "Hey, what can someone give me our values? Can someone tell me what our values are, what it means?" We try to share stories consistently of someone who gave a fanatical care experience, and we have awards every month for the people who represented that value the last month. And so we do
Mm,
try to talk, not just talk about it a lot, but really integrate it into what it means. And I think the power comes in when your team members start enforcing it without you saying it, right? Like I don't feel like
mm.
this new person we hired is representing relentless very well, or I don't think like I
Yeah.
think this
Okay.
person's going to be great because they really seem to get the one team value. Like they're almost enforcing the values that we've set up. So really quickly, what that means to us, fanatical care means literally we're fans of our customers, right, and of our clients, of our patients, and we want their success. And the fanatical part's kind of fun too because it maybe implies you're a little bit overboard with it, like you're maybe a little crazy about it, and so you'll do things that other people wouldn't do. And examples of what
Okay.
that looks like: we had a office manager who was doing a travel event. So she was in Chicago. She was driving to an event in I think it was in Indiana.
Yeah.
Her van broke down on the way. Calls and gets the tow thing and everything figured out. But she goes and gets a U-Haul. Doesn't even ask us. She just goes and gets a U-Haul. Comes back to where the van is, and while they're figuring that out, she starts unloading all the equipment into the U-Haul and keeps driving through the night to get to her event the next day to serve people, right? Like that is fanatical care. That's relentless
And
too, right? Like
relentless. Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna make it happen for this client.
Yeah.
And we would have for sure understood, and we probably, I'm sure the client would have understood, and we could have explained, "Hey, fan broke down. We're gonna have to
Breakdown.
reschedule."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she was passionate about making it work for these patients, and I think obviously it's just a great example of that. One team I think goes a little bit without saying. It's just like, hey, you got your
Mhm.
team's back. Someone maybe is sick, and you fill in. You try to support each other. One way we talk about one team, and we stole this from Patrick Lencioni's book, and he talked
Yeah.
about Intel talking about this, but Intel had this. I don't know if it was a value or a saying, but they said disagree and commit. And so
Okay.
the idea is we can get in a room, we can all agree with each other and quarrel about what the issue is. But once we commit to it, like once we decide that's what we're doing, we're all on board,
When
right?
we
Like we
walk out,
commit
we're
and we're
all
going to make it
on. Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, I think of course every company and individuals we make mistakes, but I do think we try hard to make that part of who we are. And I think we've done a pretty good job of hiring for those values. I think one thing I learned from shout out Scott Johnson. He's a very successful founder and CEO. Sold Workfront at Task to Adobe, and now is the CEO of Motivosity, which is also a company that we use. But he told me one time something really interesting. He said, you put your money where your mouth is with your values. Like you pay for them essentially. So I think
Yeah.
one of their values he mentioned was I think it's like live young or something. And he said, sometimes what that looks like is I don't let them, but he's like, my team will go and they'll play pickleball in the middle of the day for like 2 hours. And some people could see that as like I lost 2 hours of productivity. But I see that as I have this active, like exciting workforce, and that's
Yeah.
part of the value, and I'm willing to pay that price for that value, essentially. Like, and I thought that was
Yeah.
a really cool concept. And so like when you think about our value of relentless, when we hire a new office manager, that's a hard job. There's a lot of travel, there's a lot of driving, and we've learned as we've grown in our interviews now, by the time they make it to that third interview, if they're progressing in the process, Derek, who's our VP of operations, I'm being a little facetious here, but it's almost like he scares them out of the job. Like, hey, you're going to run into this. How are you going to handle this? Hey, you're going to have to drive 2 hours for this event. What if something happens while you're driving? And, like really trying to see, is this person almost get excited by the challenge of that? Because I think
Right.
that's part of what it takes. Like, look, to be honest with you, it's easier to work at a dental practice. It's way the freak easier.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
exactly how much your commute's going to be. You know that everything's going to be there. You know the AC is going to work. Like you might show up to a site and their whatever is not working, right? And so changing where you go every day makes it a heck of a lot harder. But I think we tend to pay more than the average local practice. And I think the work can, for the right person, be more rewarding, right? You're serving someone who hasn't been to the dentist in a really long time. And so this
Hmm.
person really needed your help. And I think that can be really gratifying
So you
for a
found a
lot of
way to
people.
filter for that. Basically, you're selecting for that kind of energy. Somebody's going to be fulfilled,
Absolutely.
and find that relentless, right, to get the
Yeah.
job done. Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to ask you a really hard question now. So we've been talking about values. I would love to hear how Jordan Smith's personal values
Mm.
support Jet Dental's values.
Ooh, that's interesting. Well, let me start with maybe where, just for me personally, the kinds of work that excites me the most, and
Okay.
I think I can tie it in here. So for me personally, one, I want to feel like I'm making a difference. Like that's a really important part of work for me. Um, I've always enjoyed being on a team where I can have a big impact, and so no shade to anybody who does this because there's pros and cons to both. But like working for a large company like Procter and Gamble, I don't think I would enjoy it. I just think
Mm,
I would feel very unimpactful. And so making a difference for me is important.
okay.
Second, the relationships that you make at work and the fun that comes from that, the people you work with, feeling like you're surrounded by people who are talented and challenge you, is another big thing that really motivates me and excites me. And then the third thing, I just really want to believe in whatever it is that I'm working for or selling. And I've been fortunate, I think, in my career to feel like really good about the mission and the products or services of the companies I've worked for. And I feel that way about Jet. Like I feel so much
Mm,
confidence talking to somebody about what we do because I know it's going to help them, right?
yeah.
I know you've got people in your building right now who aren't going, and I can help them, right? Like we
Yeah.
can come in and
Yeah.
help them, and so that's been really cool. Like we can be economically rewarded for doing a good thing, right? For providing a service that's great. Um, and so, if you ask me, am I passionate about dentistry? I'm certainly a lot more now than I was when I started the company. But if you ask me when I started the company, like, no, not really. But I'm passionate about helping people and making an impact, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
now tying it into like fanatical care, one team, relentless. Well, on the one team side, yeah, I wanna hire people I like,
Yeah.
and that are good, and that are hungry and humble and smart, and they add to, like, we have so many people who in our company do their thing way better than I can do that job, right?
Yeah.
And they make our entire company greater. And then when I think about, fanatical care, I think about my own personal value work wise of kind of making an impact.
Hmm.
Like that's a lot of what fanatical care means to me, right? Is you, whatever service or whatever product it is, just try to be the best at that thing and try to make sure that the service goes well. And if it doesn't go well, make up for it, right?
Fix it. Yeah.
We've had, folks buy flowers for somebody when something didn't go exactly as it seemed. And that seems a little weird, but it meant a lot to that person. And I think that's a lot of what fanatical care means. And then lastly, I think when you believe in what you do, it's a little easier to be relentless. Like it's a little easier to buy in. It's a little easier to
Yeah.
get through the really hard times. So you can celebrate the wins on the other side of it. So
Excellent.
anyway, maybe not. I don't know if that was quite personal values, but at least personal motivating factors for me that I think are part of why we have those values at our company.
No, that's really good. Like, I mean, for me, a lot of times that comes down to like, um, if there's not good alignment between your own personal values and the values of your company, you're kind of faking it,
Yeah,
and people see it, like people see it. But I could see and feel your energy right as you were talking about that. Like, it's you're not having to fake it, right? It's not a marketing story. It's real and authentic. So that was a great answer. Appreciate it. I'm curious. I think you alluded a little bit to this. Uh, that your leadership, it seems, has also had to change as the company grew. You were in sales, and then you move into CEO. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you view your leadership and how it's had to change, and then we'll kind of pivot into where you're going, right? And what do you see as the next challenges?
sure. Yeah, I think definitely the biggest challenge and one of the hardest things for me to adapt to as a first time co-founder and then a first time CEO. Previously, I'd been in leadership roles, but over a specific function or department, right?
Yeah.
Like I was the director of X, I was the vice president of sales, I was the whatever. And it it was really natural for me in those roles. Like I really understood this is my core set of KPIs, and that's what I'm going to drive every single day, and that's what I'm going to train about, and I'm going to make sure our incentive structure aligns. And like it was a lot easier. Um, and transitioning into CEO, it was a little harder for me sometimes to know where to spend my time,
Mm,
what to delegate, what not to delegate. Sometimes I had a hard time delegating. Um, Getting the priorities right because early on in your company, the reality is it feels like everything's a priority, right? Like it feels
yeah.
like you're doing everything. And early on, I was doing everything, I was doing a lot of it anyway. I was wearing a lot of hats. So one of the hardest things for me has been to learn that. I think I've done a much better job as I develop. And I think it's a cliche and you hear it in every book, but it's so, so true that getting the right people, especially the right leaders, middle managers or leaders in your
Mm,
department, of your departments, department heads makes a big difference. So I love my executive team. And to be honest with you, before I'd hired those individuals and before I'd hired great leaders in our team, I felt like I was languishing. Like for like 2 years, I felt like I was really almost suffering. Like by
yeah.
Sunday night, I would like have the scaries about, oh man, I got another 80 to 100 hour work week ahead of me, and I'm doing all this stuff I'm probably not qualified to do. And when I started getting the right people on our bus and in the right seat on our bus, we really started to see momentum. And so, one of, I mean, I don't think you asked this, but a piece of advice I would give to entrepreneurs is like try to have some forethought about that. Like try to think
Mm,
about, do I have the money and the funding to get the right people in? And there's nothing wrong with. I'm not saying I discourage 80 to 100 hour weeks, but it's probably not sustainable in,
right.
in the long run. It's not
Mhm.
going to be enjoyable, and you want to find a way to make it scalable, right? And so finding great people who believe in your vision and finding a way to incentivize them to join with you
Yeah.
um, in the journey is cool. I mean, if I ever start another company, one of the things I think I'd really like to do is like find and build that great team and try to give them ownership early to bring them along for the ride. But anyway, I think that to me was something that I really learned is you have to find great people and you have to trust them. And you got to trust people based on their character and their competence, right? So are they really good at their job, competence and character? Are they just a good person? Are they going to
Yeah.
try their best? Are they going to be honest with you? And you can't train the character side of it. And so I
Yeah.
think leveraging people and relationships you've developed is a great way to
Mm,
find folks that you start your next company with, right? You want to make sure that when you go into battle every day, you trust the guy in the foxhole with you.
yeah.
So
So, you mentioned it's cliche, right? Because everybody's looking for the best talent, right? And what have you learned about how to keep those people, right? When you find the right ones, right? How do you make sure that they are getting what they need, right? From the experience at Jet Dental?
Yeah, I think top grading says an A player is the top of the top at the price you can afford, right? So like, I mean, it's okay to call out, like, when you're a startup, sometimes you can't afford the very best depending on how you funded the company. I mean, if you've raised a bunch of money, yeah, sure, go for it, right? Go get the very best at the very best price. But um, I think being really honest with the people you're having those conversations with, right? So
Yeah.
one of our VP of operations, he's been with us just about as long as anybody. I think, we've been around 7 years. He's been 6. And when I hired him, we'd worked previously together. I feel like I was pretty honest about, like, hey, you could probably go get a job over here and they're going to have better benefits and you're probably going to get paid more right out of the gate, but I can offer you some equity in the company. And here's what that
Yeah.
looks like. And also, um, I just believe there's room to grow, right? And one of the things you can offer as a startup is kind of limitless learning potential. Like, you're going to learn a
Yeah.
ton.
Okay.
And second, there's great growth opportunity, right? And so he started with us as a salesperson, worked his way over into operations, and became our. He actually ended up being our VP of sales or director, I can't remember, and then worked his way over to VP of operations. Um, and is doing a phenomenal job. And he's learned a ton and grown a ton. And I've seen that in him. I think we both
Hmm.
learned and grown together. And we've had to have hard conversations along the way, along with a lot of other employees. I've given you one example, but I think just being really honest about that, like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, you could go over here and probably make more money right out of the gate. I think we've got this potential, and here's how I see us. This is what I believe we can become, and I
Mm.
think you're the right guy to help guide us there. And so that's one piece of advice I give: is
Okay.
just know who you
Yeah.
are, know the pros, know the cons, and find someone who buys into that, right? Because listen, if they don't, like, I've interviewed people who, like, it was pretty clear, like, nah, I want to have 3 people under me doing that stuff. I don't really want to do that. And it's like, well, that's not what
This
we
isn't
are,
the
man.
right place.
I
Yep.
can't afford that. Like, I can afford you and you're gonna have to do everything.
Yeah.
And we've been at stages like that in our company. And you kind of want to find people who, like, are eager to be part of that and to grow. And then do your best to reward them when you can,
Mhm.
right? And as you grow and as you can start giving raises or whatever, just try to do that.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. So, what's next for you in Jet Dental? Like, where do you go from here? What's your focus now?
Yeah, I mean, our focus right now still is just on growth. So I think our kind of next big milestone for us is we want to have a van in all of the major metros across the country. So we're nationwide, but we've got like 20 teams, and so some of those teams are covering a couple of states. And our exact is like the 40 biggest metros. We want to have a team thriving in each of those metros, and so we're still pretty young in our company growth and we still have a long way to go. And so that's probably our next big phase. I think from there, we probably start to look at, can we be more of a true dental home for some of our patients, right? Can we provide more services, whether on site or at other facilities for them? So that's definitely like a Gen 2 thing. I'm not even really thinking about that right now. Pops
Okay.
in my head from time to time, but right now we're really focused on growth, right?
Just scaling the existing model.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think we've nailed the
Hmm.
model, and now we're scaling that model, and already made some good headway there, but we still have a long way to grow, to go and to grow.
And what's the biggest challenge with that? Between 20 and the 40 target.
Yeah, I mean, I think always in scaling a business, um, the first two things that come to mind for me is the cash to do so, right? And
Okay.
just the financial difficulty of growing and scaling and remaining profitable while you scale. Like, that's just a challenge that every business faces, and making sure we've raised the right amount of money if we need to, or that we're
Yeah.
ready to scale. And so I think that's the cash side of it's always an important conversation, and not something that gets talked about in a lot of books, I don't think, but obviously it matters, right? You have to have the right amount of money to to grow.
Hmm.
And then the second one I think is something we've talked a lot about on here today, which is just keeping that culture strong and vibrant while you're adding a lot of people or while you're growing. And that can be a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes
Not to
when
dilute.
you're
Yeah.
growing, yeah, a little bit breakneck pace will start to degrade the kind of strong culture. And everybody still kind of knows everybody at this size of company. And I've been in companies where there was 2,000 people and we didn't know everybody. And watching that change, it does have an impact on your culture, right? And how do
Yeah.
you evolve to keep the culture strong even when you don't know everybody's name, right? And so that's something
Right.
we'll probably start to see as we start to grow.
And what are the implications of that challenge, right, for your leadership as CEO?
Well, I think again it goes back to I physically won't be able to have one-on-ones with everybody. I don't now, right? I physically probably we're getting to that point where I'm not going to meet a whole bunch of people that work for us, right? I already don't. Like
Uh-huh.
there's a whole bunch of hygienists and assistants that I will never meet. And so really focusing on that core leadership group, making sure you've hired great leaders who represent the company well. They have their own strengths, they have their own personality, they have their own style, but they believe in the mission of your organization. They believe in your values, and they're reinforcing that in their own way, right? And so I think that's key is making sure you have a great leadership group that you can trust to scale with you.
Excellent. That's great. When you think ahead, right, to where you've accomplished, um, the growth that you're looking for, I'm curious how you see like the legacy. What are you trying to build? Like when you think about beyond the dollars and cents of the company, right? What kind of mark are you trying to leave?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to one of my personal motivators is feeling like you made an impact. And
Uh-huh.
when I think about what we're doing in dentistry, I feel like one of the impacts we're making is we really are providing access and expanding access of care to people who might not otherwise go. And that's really motivating to me. It's really cool to me to hear people and see reviews and see people say like, "Oh, this was so cool," and I hadn't been in 5 years, and like I'm
Yeah.
really grateful you were here today. And um, you know, cleaning teeth all day may not sound like the coolest and sexiest thing ever, but for those of us who are doing it, and for our hygienists who are doing it and helping people, our dentists, it's really rewarding and impactful to know like I made a
Mm.
small minor difference in that person's life. I made it easier for them. They didn't have to drive and wait in traffic and sit in a waiting room and leave work for 2 hours. Like that to me is really fun. That's really cool. And so, if we can do that for a heck of a lot more people in the next few years across the country. To me, that's really fun and that's really gratifying.
Awesome. That's cool. So kind of rewinding to where you started, right? You're a young business person looking for a business to start. Right? If you if you were talking to somebody in your shoes back then, like what advice would you have for that budding entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, one I would is if you can find something that's already cash flowing, it's a heck of a lot easier. If you can find something that you just think you could scale, try to do that. But there's a few things I think business model wise that come to my mind, and I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for here. Maybe I'll just
Wherever
spout a
your
few off
head
really
goes.
quickly. Like I think that if I could go back, I'd probably try to say, hey, look for something with high margins,
Mhm.
where you can just afford to make some mistakes a little more,
A little more
because there's higher
freeboard.
margin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think recurring revenue is a big one, right? Those
Mhm.
two right away are why tech companies are so valuable is because they have really high margins and really high recurring revenues. But there's other industries that have that, and other things. Um, but I think going to more of the soft skill side of things,
Mindset. Yeah.
one of the things I'd say is like I touched on earlier, it's gonna be harder than you think. And so early on, I fell into this, I feel like trap of always looking at the gap. And there's a book called The Gap in the Game that talks
Ah,
about
Dan
how,
Sullivan. Yeah.
yeah, Dan Sullivan. Yeah, great book.
Mhm.
And he talks about how, you know, the best, most um, high ambition people, I guess you could say, they always are looking at the horizon. You never get to the horizon, right? Like, so they always move the needle, they always move the goalpost. And a lot of times they fall in this trap of they're always looking at the gap from where they are now to where they were, instead of looking at the gain, looking backward at all the good things they've done. And that book actually really helped change my mindset. And I wish I'd read it before I started the company, because
Mm.
when you're a small company and when you're young, you're always in the gap. Like, it feels like you're never going to be. And one of like Qualtrics is a huge success here. Like, I'm never gonna be Qualtrics. Like, how do I get to there? And that really changed my mindset. Like, looking back at, like, man, how far we've come since we started this company, and all the amazing companies and people we've worked with and served. That's super cool and rewarding. And so one thing I'd say to a new entrepreneur is, like, be prepared for the hard times, but celebrate the wins. Like, give yourself some credit, celebrate with your team, try to really enjoy the process. I did not do a good job of that for a full 2, 3 years. I'm
Hmm.
doing better now. And A, you needed to be sane, but B, I think you'll learn more. Like, you
Yeah.
really will learn more when you kind of try to reflect on, well, what did I learn from that experience, as well as what are the things I've developed, and what are the good things I've learned that I want to
Yeah.
continue to do well.
So much easier to stay motivated, right? Too, when you're thinking about the wins, right? The things that the progress that I've made versus looking at that gap, yeah, yeah, when those 80-hour weeks that you were describing, right? That can happen. You got to put energy, you got to watch your energy really carefully. And I love
Yeah.
that book. And so it was Dan Sullivan was who was a co-author. I think it was Ben Hardy is the guy who wrote it.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I got that right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I read it, as you can tell, loved it too. So thanks for that nugget. That's awesome. Um, yeah, I think, I'd like to wrap up here in a minute, but first, I would love if you could tell somebody, if they're watching this and they're like, man, I would love that service. Where can I learn more? Where would you send somebody who's interested in either working with your team or, getting your services at their place of work?
Yeah. Well, you can email me directly. My email is Jordan at jetdental.com. Our website's a great place, though, jetdental.com. We've got fill forms where you could request some information. You can call us.
Uh-huh.
You can email us at hello@jetdental.com. But yeah, we'd be happy to help your team.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you joining me at Untold. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. There's some super great nuggets in here. Really appreciated the time today. Thanks for coming here with me, Jordan.
Thanks, John.
All right. Take care.